Today's story is about my almost successful attempts in making resin blooms and uncovering secrets to perfecting the technique. This is the second attempt of casting resin blooms in these two silicone coaster molds. They are almost 8 to 10 millimeters deep and have enough room for casting the blooms and then the background layer. My first attempt was a bust, but I've picked up a few pointers along the way. One lesson being that I need to let the resin rest for almost 15 minutes after mixing the resin and hardener before I start working with it. This was step number 1. Let's start with our larger coaster first. Step 2 is pouring the base layer with my decanted epoxy resin mix. It seems that there are some lumps and I have not mixed it very well. I should have done a better job mixing. The next step is marking the center of the flower with some crushed glass glitter. The color palette for this bloom is going to be shades of pink, so I chose this particular pinkish mix to match. Let's run my trusty toothpick along the edges and ensure that there are no trapped stray bubbles. I am nudging the glitter so that it is evenly spread out and sinks without clumping. Step 4 is inking this resin surface. I am using these 3 shades of pink. The darkest color first, dropped into the center of the bloom. Now, this layer is what adds color to the petals near the center. It is lighter than the center, and I will add the lightest color in the next ring. Another lesson learned during my first attempt was to keep the alcohol inks a little away from the edge. So I am being careful here. You can already see the converging movement of the resin here because instead of spreading out, the lightest color blobs are sort of gravitating towards the center. So this was the color base for the bloom. I think we need a little more color, so I'm going to add a few more drops and help these guys spread out. For our next step, it's time to prep our white color, which will be used to create the blooms from the same resin mix. I am putting them into these 2 containers. The first mix will use white alcohol ink. This one is deep white. This is a little heavier. I want to see how they compare in the bloom making process. Now for a little swirl. The surface seems to be clumping a little. The colors have also moved away from the sides and are rapidly moving towards the center. Now for the next super important step. Let's check if the resin is ready with a simple drop test. This is floating, so we are good to go. Okay, this drop was accidental, so I will even it out by making a ring of dots. This is too thick. Maybe I should have started from the center so that the thickest part could have been masked behind the glitter. The way the surface is behaving is different this time. Is it a mixing problem? And the pull of the surface clumping is also distorting the color and the pattern. Now let's add a round of dots with this deep white resin mix. I am using both the whites in one piece to see the difference. Let's make the petals. I think because the mold is triangular, maybe this swirl pour technique is not the way to go and will look nicer with individual petals. I will explore in some later project. Now I will leave this to cure overnight. Let's quickly get working on the second mold. The resin mix is ready. I will follow the same steps as the previous pink bloom. The color palette for this bloom is green. The ink seemed to be much more well behaved than in the pink blossom. Since the resin surface is less, the second ring will be a combo of two shades. Now, a light swirl to make the colors mingle. Let's pour. Again, I dropped a drop, so I will pretend that it was completely intentional and complete the ring. I didn't learn from my mistake and started from the edge. I should have started from the center. I am worried that if my resin stream is too thick, in this small mold I will not be able to recover. Anyways, I will try to be super careful. Here goes nothing. Yay! I think the stream is pretty well defined and maybe this will work. Everything is maintaining its consistency while I'm pulling with the toothpick. The surface goop which happened in the pink bloom didn't happen, and I actually see a discernible pattern here. I will not swirl this much, just a little. Let's leave it to cure overnight. Now my coasters are cured and will need a background. Before we go for that, let's prepare the resin for the base for the pink coaster. I want to create two layers. The first layer backing the bloom will have a green background and a complement to the pink bloom. This color is looking so pretty. The layer here is thin because it will be backed again with black, so it needs to remain translucent. Let's spread the resin around. We will come back to this tomorrow. This next layer is going to be the dark background. I'm really curious about the bloom. I can see that the dots have moved from the periphery towards the center and are well defined, but I really can't see much of what I would consider to be a bloom. It looks wispy like a galaxy or a jellyfish. This quantity is too less, needs some more. I will make this a little darker. It will create some visual interest in the background. I can see how the surface is sort of moving towards the center. I'm beginning to understand how a resin bloom really works by looking at this movement of the surface. Let's leave this to cure for a day or two. Look at that mica pigment visual texture. For the second mold, it is reverse. Since the flowers are green, I will mix some pink mica pigment to add a dash of that complementary color contrast to the dark background. How clumsy of me. But then life would be boring if things always went smoothly. This color mix is beautiful. I can imagine a few other projects where I would love to use this pigment proportion mix. Look at the movement of the surface, how it is moving radially from the edge to the center. I think if the curing platform is off balance, then the center will also go off center. I have too much resin on my gloves. Let's clean up a bit before I move it to its resting place, where I will leave it to cure for at least a day. There seem to be some color clumps. Let me get them with a toothpick. A final heat gun attack on surface bubbles before moving on. This black texture is dramatic and beautiful. And yippee! I think I can make out the semblance of a bloom. Look at this side layering. All the white petals floating. They look really nice. The layers of the base are also creating a unique visual interest along the edge of this coaster. Ta-da! The nice thing here is depth. The distance between the front layer and the background is casting shadows, giving it a real-world 3D feel. The little dots are floating and the center is wispy, like an underwater jellyfish. This is not a very well-defined bloom, but it is a huge win over my catastrophic first bloom attempt. I'm very pleased with the progress I have made in this technique. It also seems that heavier pigment has performed better in terms of definition. So, with this understanding, I can probably choose when to use white alcohol ink and when to use the deep white ink. Let's look at our cured hexagonal coaster. The color is difficult to show on the camera, but it is looking fabulous. The side is so pretty. Look at that. So much action and ta-da! Bloom! It has finally happened. It looks more like broccoli than a flower, but I will take it. The dots were split and they have held their own. The background is serving well. The layers and the final swirls are also well defined. Here you can also see the difference between the flower and the background, and it is adding a little more dimension to this bloom. The pink shimmer is working very nicely to complement the bloom without overpowering the dark background or the overall composition. So, my second attempt resulted in a broccoli bloom and a jellyfish bloom. Both are definitely an upgrade on my first bloom attempts where everything was pushed towards the edge and there was no petal definition whatsoever. I have already prepped for my third attempt at perfecting the bloom technique and will share it soon. Hope this was informative and fun. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.